mean, is it part of the substitute for a cake? After? Hyphen?
Good afternoon, everybody. May I request all of us to stand for a word of prayer. God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If we walk in the light, we have fellowship one with another. God is love. Everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. Praise be to God, Lord of all creation, the compassionate, the merciful, the ruler of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship, and to thee do we cry for help. Guide us in the right path, the path of those to whom thou hast been gracious. Thank you. Please be seated.
very difficult time for me. Because Dr. Baker, I would refer to him as master. Somehow I called him master after I left college, and it stuck because he somehow from post 85 kept coming towards somehow he liked it. The family gel, my extended family. So I refer to him as master. Somehow it stuck, so I refer to him as Dr. David Baker as master. I would welcome all of you who've come here for this august gathering. Most of you would be aware that he was a very low-key person. In fact, extremely low-key if that word can be used. But in fact, in those respects, somehow though he was a student and teacher, he was like a father figure to me. I lost my father when I was very young. So it was quite amazing that somehow being in 014 in Vadra South, I got a room, I opened his rooms, and that's how somehow this in and out of the rooms happened, and a bond was forged. Very difficult to explain it. Somehow my children grew up in front of him. Quite unusual. So over the years, the children and I were maybe thinking I just had a couple of minutes. He probably spent something like physically around 5 years with us. Out of the 35 or 36 that we know him, because he will be in Odisha for a few months after retirement, maybe 3 months a year. So beyond the point, it was an unusual kind of relationship with the family too. So apart from the very serious loss that we feel, because of the 32nd life of every other day, we spoke for 5 minutes, and we always did almost every day, unless he forgot. And he had a very habit of keeping the mobile phone away from him most of the time. There were many anecdotes which I could go on and on about, but since we all have many people who want to speak, a very unusual relationship, but seeing so many people, so many students, colleagues, principal, these who came out very close to him, these are all like family, he family to all of us. Very unusual thing about him was that he was in touch with just about every student who passed through his batches and kept in touch with people in the most unusual manner. I think he must have written a million letters. I think people, I can't remember anybody or think of anybody who's done something like that. I must have a few thousand with me if I'm not mistaken, because it was a weekly affair in writing. It was very unusual, but a wonderful thing. So it's a bit difficult for me, for all of us in my family too. On behalf of our family, because we considered him family, he was family to us. So, welcome you all. Please, Master.
Mr. Principal, sir, guests, fellow students, as I'm standing here, I'm looking for Dr. Baker. That corner at the end was the place he would normally sit after assembly with his sister in his hand. He would seldom walk up to the stage because he did not want to disturb the assembly, as it were. So I'm still trying to locate where he is all the time coming is there. I am thinking in terms of celebrating the immortality of the Stephania personalized by Dr. Baker. He insisted on me calling him David after I got the faculty, and I insisted on not calling him anything else but Sir, with great difficulty Baker Sir. And I was walking down from my residence to the college and took around through the chapel by realized that one of the doors which remained open for anyone who wanted to go to his room was not there. Both doors are open. I could feel him. I could see him. I could see him reminding me, telling me from distance, don't try to cross the lawns, and there's a pathway. It's very hard for me to talk about him. All that I can say, as I said earlier, he has attained immortality, the light that wanted to shine over Stevens all the time, will remain shining in his form here, now and forever. And that is how we in the San Stefania will keep getting his blessings forever. There are several anecdotes, as Dave was saying, that one can relate with. And I don't want to do that because I do not want to have this sense that he's no longer. All that I can tell you is that most of us in the department of history are his brothers, have been trained by us, have been reprimanded by him. We have been reprimanded by him, trained by him, loved by him. That endless affection and love that he showed to each one of us in his own way. And the memories that he has left behind for us, we will be cherishing so long as the Department of History lasts. I was one of those very, very fortunate ones who was taught by the famous trio, Amin Sahab, Divedi Sahab, and Baker Sahab. Now, all of them have chosen to find a place in the village. And we all can do nothing but remember him. And it's so difficult to remember someone whom you cannot forget. How do you remember somebody who is unforgettable? May God grant eternal peace to the departed soul of Dr. Baker, which has lived with us, which will continue to live with us now and forever. And now I invite one of the first students of Dr. Baker, Najib Jan, to come and say a few words.
Mr. Principal, all Stefanians, admirers, friends of Dr. Baker. Who would have imagined that one day I would be here at this moment? My class was the first class that we taught. 1969, he came and he took out the British history class. Am I audible at the back? St. Stephen's has had a litany of great teachers. When I joined, Sarkar Sahab was the principal, he was a legend, succeeded by Rajpal Sahab. But the departments, each teacher was a living legend at that time. So the history department was full of stars. Amin Sahab the, Divedi Sahab the, Shanklin Sahab the, Hala Sahab the, and in this litany of great stars and galaxy arrived this young man 37 years ago from the bush of Australia. And he always wore 3 or 4 bushels he carried with him, half-sleeved, cream in color, and he had 3 or 4 pants. And I remember 2 distinctly, a bottle green, less than a bottle green, a green pant and a chocolate brown pant, and polished black shoes. And a Parker pen with the thinnest nib possible. Those were the straight trademarks and close-cropped hair which he always had. There is something different between the late David and the others. The others loved us. We had a family relationship. I remember Amin Saab wife telling me that तुम लोगों के महबूब student हो. So there was a family association with Amin Saab, with Trivedi Saab. When I was an SDM, Mala Saab used to come to my subdivision, but there was something else about David Beckham. Mine was the first house that he visited when he arrived in India. We had an old house in Fairhaven. And that began a unique relationship between my mother, my father, my family. My mother, who passed away 2 years ago, was 96, and David used to visit her. And then later he complained to me that whenever I go, she's at namaz, and I don't get to talk to her. And my mother used to complain कि जब आते हैं मेरी नमाज के वक्त आते हैं मैं बात कैसे करूँ इससे? But the trips were repeated, and he did not stop those trips. Although several times they didn't talk. The remarkable thing, the great effort of the man. I was a young SDM in, I think, 1975. It was a small subdivision in Hoshangabad district called Harda, and I got the 10 paise inland letter that I want to come and visit you. And so I went to Hoshangabad, driving 3 hours away, and at the Punjab Mail received him, and he came and he stayed with us for a week. My eldest daughter was 2 years old, and then 16 years later, he taught her in this very college. 2 years later, I had moved to a district close to the Jhansi border called Datia, and down came the 10 paise inland letter that I'm coming. So please fetch me at Jhansi station, and I went and fetched him. He stayed with us. And once traveling from Bhopal to Raipur en route at Nagpur, I was told that he's researching a book on Central India, and so he's in some library in Nagpur. And I searched him out, and then I picked him up and I said, चलिए रायपुर चलिए वहाँ पे छोड़ा देंगे आपको 3-4 घंटे का सफर है. So he came to Raipur, stayed with us for a week, and came back. And as time progressed, at each and every of my postings, I was in the Philippines, and there was David. I was in London, and there was David. He had gone to research the book on St. Stephen's College, and he was going to Cambridge. I was then in Oxford. He stayed with us. So I'm telling this story because amongst these great teachers that St. Stephen's has had over the past century, I do not think, and I'm not denigrating anyone, but I do not think anyone has this seminal quality of greatness that this man had. A man comes from Australia, in a new country, in a new civilization, and doesn't forget to wish us on our festivals. Mahmood is here, he is competing with me for Eid. I would go to Mahmood or I would come to Najib. So, we talk of Sufis, we talk of monks. I think in my life, if I have ever met a real Sufi, a real monk, it is David Beckham. He has actually passed through life only desiring the best for others. I have not known David in these 52 years that I have known him ever seeking anything for himself. No. So what a unique man. His dress, the dress that you see is the dress he saw the last 10 years. He wore nothing but that in the winters. The brown Angola shirt, the red sweater, the coat, and a khaki Angora pant. He had of course graduated to slippers in the summer with that chola, but that never changed. The man never changed. His students became big. Some became ministers, some made good money, some were in civil service, some became teachers. They made money, they made houses. He helped them, he saw them. But for himself, David Baker has never desired anything. But it was a life of sacrifice, and that is why I call him a true monk. Books have been written about the life that students have spent in Gurudev Rabindranath Shankar when they spent at the Shankar, at the feet of the Guru. I think all of us here who have been students of David Baker are doubly fortunate to have spent time at his feet. A teacher that we will never come across. Thank you very much.
Principal, teachers, and colleagues. When I was asked to speak, I decided to write out my speech, much as Dr. Baker would have wanted me to be very careful with the use of words, so I wanted to be absolutely precise, which is why I wrote it down. My association with Dr. Baker spans 2 generations. I met him first in the 1980s because my father, Prodi Sen, was a civil servant in the state government, same father as Jan. Dr. Baker sought his help to access the Secretariat Library. My father didn't know him before, and it was a Stephen's connection which started a friendship spanning many years. Dr. Baker was staying in the PWD guest house, doing long hours of research in the Secretariat Library. Rest houses often are notorious to be quite unclean, and which is what the case was with the PWD. He would clean his home and his bathroom every day meticulously before going in for long hours of research into the Central Secretariat Library. It is an abiding regret that I found his exterior forbidding when I came into college and when I met him. There was a duality he possessed. Behind the stern exterior was always the hint of deep affection. While fastidious about personal cleanliness, hygiene, and orderliness, he was unfazed by the dirt and filth which often lay around many of the places he visited, including Rewa and museums of Madhya Pradesh, Satna, etc. He was as much at home on the high table at St. Stephen's College as he was with the Bhavas. I was amongst the timid who never broke the surface, yet in his going away there's a deep sense of loss. Passing away of what he represented, his routine was legendary. The tutorials, the lecture by cards, the strict compliances, the possibility of friendship over tea to those he invited in his sparse and immaculate room. It was viewed by me at that time with a little bit of a wistful in college. But later, in point of time, it became a point of certainty in a rapidly changing world. For people like me who often remained in touch with him, it gave hope that goodness could be created and preserved through orderliness, discipline, and dedication. Visits to college to see him were times of renewal, and despite his advancing age, there was a sense of stability which he imparted. One of the retreats which I was reading mentioned that he represented the spirit of St. Stephen's. And I often asked myself, what is this spirit of St. Stephen's? And I was deeply reflecting on what Dr. Baker was to see if I could sense it out. What marked him was enormous sincerity in works and his personal relationships. There was vigor in his vocation which never wavered, and he went wherever it took him, from dusty archives in New Delhi to the interior of Madhya Pradesh in Rewa and Satna, as I mentioned. His lectures were meticulously prepared, with trademark cards and tow, tutorials were exacting. He labored over writing the history of St. Stephen's for many years. When we last met him, he informed that the cards with the points were ready, and then explained how those would be translated by a rigorous process into chapters. Some chapters had been written earlier. The incompleteness itself is a testimony to the seriousness with which he took the task. In his personal relationships, he was always there. I was never a equal correspondent, but whenever I did, the reply always came back, "I am with you." He kept alive that art of letter writing and did not succumb to the pressures of email. And this preference remained till the end, as Mahmood and I realized when we last visited him in February this year and asked him if we could call him now and then, to which he kind of reacted with disdain and said, no, I prefer letters. He would traverse across the country to visit a former student or friend for important ceremonies, as Mr. Young pointed out. His visits during festivals, rituals of relationships fulfilled with unerring regularity and with deep feeling. There was great constancy in his messages. He is the Diwali manager who was there in the best tradition of the influence. And therefore, in that sense, I suppose, he represented the spirit of St. Stephen's in these personal qualities. And it was befitting that the college claimed him back, surrounded by his friends in the premises of the institution he gave his life to. When we last met, he seemed happy, his dignity intact in the last days. I often wonder about his last moments, the way we had found him, and I discussed with my wife. And she said it's not likely to have been painful. I'm grateful to the powers that be, that his end was also personal. Thank you. I would now request Dr. Nena Dayal.
I'm Prashanto. I read out my piece about Dr. Baker. In the last decade or more, Dr. Baker and I argued about and disagreed about many more things than we agreed on. The usefulness of his sending letters to the principal, and I mean the extreme of letters. The letter to the makers of Guila jam. Chunks of grapefruit in their marmalade have become unacceptably large. His comments on there being too many girls in college, too much high-pitched conversation, his ticking students off for wearing shorts and short skirts. And we argued about my teaching style, too modern, too political, too tactile. But these were also the years when I realized just what an extraordinary teacher he was. In a huge history class of 60 students or more, and some students are more interested in the subject than others. We needed that. We don't make enough effort to join the uninterested, the disinterested student. But Dr. Baker did. He was a teacher who reached out to every student. He made every student write essays. In the days before internal assessment, this was really quite an achievement. He would go over these essays, line by line, paragraph by paragraph, suggesting changes. Move that sentence to the top of the paragraph. This should be a semicolon, not a comma. Those who got less than 5 on 10 were made to rewrite their essays till they made it to 5.5. Students who managed to escape writing essays in one term were made to make up in the next term or the next year. There was just no escape. When students in this block wanted a night out and sent notes, those too were returned with Dr. Baker's scribbles. A comma moved to its right place, spellings corrected. As an undergraduate student, I grumbled about Dr. Baker's lectures when others started introducing us to the exciting work on gender. I grumbled when I read Robert and thought that Dr. Baker had discussed the most interesting parts of his work. But what I realized later was that Dr. Baker drew our attention to the enormous range of literature, which we read, reread later, and then used in our own work. His lectures and tutorials were the foundation on which we lived. Dr. Baker wasn't just a teacher. He was a scholar who continued his research through his years of undergraduate teaching at a time when that was very rare. While most people saw him as a solid, rather old-fashioned scholar, it's interesting that he considered his 1984 ISHR article, A Serious Time of Forest Satyagraha in Madhya Pradesh 1930, one of his best pieces. This is an early piece of research in what came to be known as the field of environmental history, published some years before Ram Guha's Unfired Woods and Darjeeling Guha's This Vishal Land. Late in life, Dr. Baker became interested in tree history as he was working on his third book. That interest resulted in an article on the human presence in Baghelkhand, Madhya Pradesh, in 800 BC, published in Prantara, the journal of the UP State Archaeological Department, in 2004-5. This was completely different from anything he had attempted earlier. He was a historian of modern India who had taught European history. On the first page, he writes that the article drew on conversational skills and corrections by an angel planning. his former student, and Mr. Dwivedi, his colleague. Friendships with colleagues and students across generations were cherished and nurtured. I wasn't one of the colleagues or students who received long letters from Dr. Baker, but I did receive notes, bilingual manuscript notes. Sometimes kept under the door of my parents' home, sometimes in my pigeonhole in college. Once in a while, he warned me that he would drop in next Saturday and expected me to accompany him to the, in inverted commas, the backside of Khan Market to buy jhalis in Devanagar. And I received postcards from everywhere, even from Uzbekistan. I was clearly not right on top of his list because he had finished the packet of postcards before I became eligible for one. So he cut up the packet, created a postcard out of it, and sent it off, crammed with details about his travels. Nothing was ever wasted, no scrap of paper, no inch of space on the postcard. Yet he was also extraordinarily generous. He was generous with his time. He was generous in sharing work he had done over decades. One year I found myself unexpectedly and with a day's notice having to teach one of Dr. Baker's papers. That's how he always thought of those papers. He took me to his veranda and over many afternoons opened out file after file of his notes to explain the course to me. I saw then that his notes were not the sort of notes the rest of us will have, points on scraps of paper. There were carefully typed sentences in proper paragraphs, with material from new books stuck or stapled on every page. And he was sharing the hard work of decades with me when I hadn't even asked. It was enough that I had been his student. He thought I should return to college and stick it out. And he thought this might help. I shall never forget his kindness and help. Every batch, every student, every resident of his blocks was important for him. He remembered everyone, their names, faces, voice, handwriting, idiosyncrasies. Exactly 20 years after I finished my undergraduate degree, I received one of Dr. Baker's famous notes, summoning me to his rooms. He pulled out a book. It had been given to him by my class, and I had inscribed it for him on behalf of my classmates. To the martinet whom we love and respect. Thank you, Dr. Baker, for being that martinet, who will always be a presence in the work we do, in our conversations, in our life. I now request Vikram Phukan to speak about Dr. Baker.
I first came to know Dr. Baker in 1982, and I joined college as a student. Because I was neither in history nor in this block, I had to wait for 14 years before getting to know him. That's when I joined the faculty as a teacher. And as a bachelor, I naturally moved into one of the blocks of residence. I was in fact in Northern South. And he was then, I think, in Gurudwara South. Right. And we began to meet each other. A friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, already within a few days of my joining, he was a student, another block tutor, and we meet at the high table along to Bhushan and various others. And Dr. Baker was obviously the dominating figure at the high table, but dominating not in the sense of someone who sort of imposed on me. It was just that he was so much a part of the high table that we felt that there was incomplete without him. So we talked to him, and slowly the invitations to tea began to come. And I became friends with him. And then in the winter of 2000-2001, I went to the History Society on a trip to Pakistan, on which Dr. Baker also came. And we became very good friends. It was a very, very moving trip for both of us, and we kept talking about it for the rest of our lives. And that sort of started a series of conversations which would happen sometimes in his room, sometimes at my place, drinking tea or lunch. And he would invite himself over if I didn't invite him at the right time, and he would regularly invite me to his place for tea. I just want to recreate one of those teas, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. A lot of you are familiar with. So it's typically around 5 p.m. and just before 5 p.m., 5 minutes to 5, I set out for his room. I had already informed him that I'm coming, or he would have called me earlier and told me that he was expecting me. So I come to his rooms and I would knock gently on the open door. One of the two doors was always open. I would knock gently and he would say, come in. Of course, it would take me a couple of minutes to take off my shoes if he expected me to do in the vestibule. And then I would go and meet him and move to the chair in the corner opposite his desk and by the bookshelf and sit down. And we exchanged pleasantries. After which, he'd offer me tea. And he might say that, this wasn't the kind of tea that I would like, but he never was offered it because I was going to be looked at a tea connoisseur. So the tea was always of a certain type. He would have a box of tea and he'd have he'd heat water on that electric stove, which probably lasted forever. And then he would put the tea bag into the mug and hand you a beautiful little spoon, one of the collection of spoons that he had that he collected all over the different parts of the world. Moist to the jar of milk powder and sugar, and also hand you another jar of these round biscuits with jam in the center, which I think he changed from only during the last few years of his life. Forever I remember those round biscuits with jam in the center. And then I'd sit down and the conversation would continue. And I was thinking about the kinds of conversations that I had with him over these 25 years that I knew him. And there were a few topics around which he tended to gravitate. One was, of course, his relationship with students, his abiding relationships with students, which began when they joined college and often lasted for the next 30, 40 years. He would talk about the letters that he'd written to someone, for example, there was a number of his letters in that beautiful block piece that he's written. And he would talk about the evolution of the behavior and the demographics of the students over the years that he works in Stevens College. He would talk about how the faculty had changed. He would talk about how the residents had changed with the introduction of female students into the college and various other things. And then he would also talk about sometimes about a monument that he visited and on which he might have written a poem. For example, he was very, very fond of the Chaburja Mosque on the ridge, and he had written a poem on it, which is in the one of the CDs that sometimes he would talk about religion. He was a deeply religious person, and he was brought up in a very strict Anglican household in Australia. But very late in life, he decided to convert to Catholicism. I'm not sure what exactly the motivation for that was, but he spoke about this several times to me. And he also spoke about the wrath that unleashed from his father, whom he sort of revered. He was very, very fond of his father. He loved him. He was also fearless. And so he spoke about the crisis that he would undergo at that time. And he also spoke about his view of religion. It was not a narrow kind of Christianity that he believed in. It was a very inclusive kind of Christianity. It was at a personal level, a very deep Christianity that he didn't seek to impose on anyone else. And I would always sort of just sit back and listen, sort of drinking everything that he said. And I was thinking to myself that, these crises that he went through were very much a part of what he was as a person. I'm thinking not only of the crisis he went through when he became a Catholic, but also the conclusion of his initial years of leaving Australia. For example, he always spoke about his early years in Australia, but whenever he went back, he would say he didn't feel at home. And he said he didn't feel at home because it was an extremely materialistic place, and somehow he felt he couldn't connect to that materialism. And when he left Australia and he came to India, this was one of his crises. When he left, when he changed to Catholicism, this was another of his crises. When he moved out of college in 1997 for the first time in probably almost 30-something years, after 30-something years in college, he had to move out to Australia because he was not clear that he was going to stay on in college. And that must have been another crisis. And then another crisis that I'm sure that he went through was when he began to lose the mobility for which he was known throughout his life. He went everywhere, not on foot to bypass other means of transport, and then in the last few years began to lose his mobility. And that must be very hard for me. But he never sort of complained about it. So I don't remember Dr. Baker ever complaining about anything. He just, he would say things, but he would be exasperated with India sometimes, and he would talk about his exasperations. And then he would say, we are like this. He always felt everything to himself. That very, very deeply. And in speaking about these crises, he was sometimes quoted to me the first couple of lines of a poem which he was very, very fond of, English poet John Donne. And I want to read out the first 4 lines of that song for you. And I think it says a lot about how he faced life. It says, batter my heart 3% God, for you as yet knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, overthrow me and you're forced to break, low, burn, and make me. So he was always trying to make himself new, as Nana pointed out, even later in life he was trying out new things. And this was true not just at the academic level, but also at the level of a human being. He always wanted to make himself new to meet the new circumstances of his life. And as I just pointed out, my relationship was entirely, almost entirely through these long conversations with him. Typically, each conversation would last about an hour, and most of the time he would be talking more than listening. And Kiti Chandra in her piece has remembered him very, very nicely. Remember these conversations with Dr. Baker and Mr. Baker very nicely. Harriet in her piece has remembered Dr. Baker beautifully in his early years and how he connected with others, what he went through and changed from the academic phase to university. And this, I had a chat with Niti the other day on Facebook about what she was going to write, and I mentioned Proust. And it reminded me of something that I read in Proust about what it meant to listen to someone like Dr. Baker. I mean, I just want to read out one line from In Search of Lost Time, where the narrator talks about a conversation with the Duchess of Claremont. He says, the conversation with the Duchess resembled reassembled the knowledge that one finds in the library of the chateau, old-fashioned, incomplete, that with intelligence is incapable of forming. I think that's what I really love about Dr. Baker's conversation, this talk. I would just listen to them in the same way that I have been in the habit all my life of listening to elderly aunts and uncles. Because I always got the feeling that their conversation was descended from another time. It's not just, it belonged to another time. It's not the kind of conversation that someone today can simply reproduce that well, because there was something about it that was completely different. And that's what I always sort of loved. I loved listening to him, because he was not just a person from a different country, he was also a person from a different time. And I think it's important to remember this, and I think it's also important to remind young people about this, because while it is true that Dr. Baker sometimes said things which were put out very badly, that was true only if you took them out of context. Once you understood the whole person, it was like understanding historical knowledge in its historical context. So you have conversation in its entirety, in its historical context, where he came from, what had formed him, and then you appreciated the kind of person he was. And I certainly did. I just loved talking to him. And of course, these conversations are over now. So I just want to read a stanza from a poem that I've written in his honor. It says, this is one stanza. Your work is done, now it's ours. To recollect, cherish, recreate. Your painstaking thoroughness, your kindness, decency intact. Your austere, generous presence, which without our eyes and our grace. Thank you. The next speaker is Justice Anubinder Singh Grewal.
Principal bodies, members of the faculty, fellow Stephanians, ladies and gentlemen. The last time I came to college was to meet Dr. Baker, and he was in such good health that it was difficult to imagine that my next trip to college will be at his memorial service. I have happy memories and lessons which I've learned from Dr. Baker, which are firmly etched in my life, and I would like to share a few of them. It was in 1985, when I was a student of history, that Dr. Baker wanted to travel to Chandigarh for a match. Devashish Mohanty was playing that match, and Dr. Baker was keen to visit Chandigarh. Punjab was a disturbed area at that time, and I was quite careful in not going through Punjab, so we took the Haryana route, which was slightly longer. Anyway, we were stopped by a cop on the way. So he looked at Dr. Baker. Before he could say anything, Dr. Baker said, "क्यों भाई, क्या बात है? क्या करते हैं?" He said, "मैं St. Stephen's में पढ़ाता हूँ, मैं शिक्षक हूँ," and that was it. That guy couldn't imagine that he was not from India. And whenever we would introduce him to our friends, they were taken aback. Why a person from Australia leaving the developed world and all the comforts, and he would come to India, especially people in Punjab who are quite desperate to go abroad for higher education or career prospects. But Dr. Baker had spurned the best offers to teach in the leading universities of the world, and he chose to stay here and serve us. He, in fact, a person of such a simple living, I mean, there would not be anybody who would come close to him. He was the perfect example of simple living and high thinking. The material comforts which we take for granted made him uncomfortable. He would travel second class. Once I booked a ticket from Chandigarh to Delhi in AC executive chair car, and he was visibly annoyed. So he did not use the air conditioner, no matter how hot it would be. And he was self-reliant, would allow you to help him with his baggage. You tried to do everything himself. Simple food he liked, though he had a sweet tooth. And wherever you go, I mean, it was such an example for the youngsters to follow. And once I was posted at Jodhpur, he visited me, we went to Mount Abu, and on the way back he was to board the Mandor Express to Delhi. So I told him, "Sir, your guest house where we were staying was right across the railway station. As the train will be visible." No, he insisted on going 45 minutes before departure. He kept on telling him. He says, "No, I have to be seated half an hour before departure." He said, "See, if somebody else is already occupying my berth, it will take a while for me to ask him to vacate it." So he did not in the bunch. So I can imagine he would have never been late to any function or any appointment. So he was seated after a time, he was sitting relaxed. He said, "Now I will unpack my stuff," everything. Very meticulous. Everything had to be in a but. And once, in fact, he's fond of nature and wildlife. We traveled to Ranthambore, the tiger reserve. And he was he was always carrying his notes about the history of the place, what he's seen, done for the day. And then he had sighted the tiger, won't be more than about 30 or 40 feet away. He happened to drop his note. And we were going to pick it up. The forest guard was with us. He says, "No, we are not allowed to alight from the vehicle." The moment Dr. Baker heard that, he said, "No." He said, "Note is important to me, but you have to follow the rules." And such an amazing person, and like material comforts he left. In fact, once we were discussing, there was a scam of hundreds of crores, and he said, "Gosh, how much?" He says, "If I have a crore, it will be a major problem for me what to do with it." Such was the man. I mean, the service which he had lent coming down to the college. I must thank the principal and members of the staff and Karamcharis for having really taken good care of him. He would always mention that they are making me comfortable, and he was expressing his gratitude. Dr. Baker's life, in fact, I mean, it is an inspiration for us. He was the perfect example of righteous living, and his ideals in life would be of immense relevance even today. And his contribution in the field of education, to our college, humanity, and the nation would rank in the highest order. India was his Karam Bhumi, and I think he left an indelible mark. And the best tribute, which I think would be for Dr. Baker, would be to try and follow the by Dr. Baker. Thank you very much. Now I request fellow Stephanian, Mr. Mahmood Faruqi, to say a few words.
The last time Dr. Baker visited us was actually just a month ago on Bakri, and I think we were probably the last visit that he made. As Najib Saab said, he used to make it a point to visit people on Eid and Bakri, and I think the last time he made the effort just simply out of his own obligation to his own way of doing things, rather than for enjoyment or for anything else. Shakil was with him, and it took a very long time to traverse the few steps from the car to the gate on his walker, and it was quite an effort, which he made without flinching at all. And he ate very sparsely that day. I remember it was quieter than usual, but he had made the effort and spent the day as he always did, which for him was an important thing, to do things as he always done them. He, as everybody knows, he corresponded with numerous people for a number of years across the globe, and we were fortunate, Anusha and I, that he sent many letters to us at various places that we lived, and I have included some of them in my tribute, and there is an excerpt that I would like to read out that actually it was a long letter. It tells us something about his own attitude to life, his vocation, and in his own words. This was written, I had known him as a hospital, and he was about to retire. Yes, I do feel part of Stephania, but I remind you that one is not an island. I am not an island, and if there has been some interaction of a positive kind, it's because students, such as your class, have accepted my initiatives and come for tea, talk, dinner. These things, dear men, are never one-sided. So I too thank God for the students for 26 years from whom I learned so much. But yes, I will be leaving all of this. I don't want to remain a day longer than I have to. I am not saying this in a silly sense. My time is drawing to a close, and I accept it. I don't know where I am to live or how. My father is giving me a legacy to buy or rent something decent, and I am grateful to him. But I had to operate as if I had nothing except my rather meager savings. It's not that I'm actually actively looking forward to the day I leave, but that I accept it as the end of a very important, even crucial phase in my life, and the beginning of another different phase. It will take some doing, but I know God will guide me and help me in the new way. Yes, the frightening, wearying, getting used to, liking, not liking, affection, some closeness maybe, the ticking off, all this will one day be a thing of the past. Of course, in some, it will continue to live, but where there has been an effective two-way relatedness. To others, it won't have been anything much. But if anything I have said exercises any check on the rash lawlessness of our fellow countrymen, or in any way creates or adds to God's overflowing love for human beings, then I will have done what He wanted me to do, against all odds, with my life from the beginning. The setting and students of Stephania have called out the right tune. The cakes are really a sacrament of the hour, whatever it is. So please gobble on whenever. I'm sorry I can't pack some and send them. The little round cookies are here, plus some of Harriet Raghunathan's excellent cake. As you all know, he was a fabulous traveler. He traveled by bus, by public transport. He used the metro well into his 80s, and he even injured his leg using the metro. He continued to use it after he became all right. But along with being a traveler, he was also a great minder, I think, not just of our institutions, our heritage, our monuments. He tried to instill civic sense and to straighten things in a righteous kind of a way, wherever he was. Writing to ASI, writing to a horticultural department, writing to governments, writing to railways. He was an invented reformer, I think, of the country that he had made home, and a nation builder too, in the sense, in relation to the economic part of our country. He once explained to me what meant to him. No, duty as such plays little part in my life. My love for God is something in me since childhood. A mercy, since it has always taken care of those darker sides of life with which we are all endowed as sons of Adam. I have always felt, since late adolescence, early manhood, had to work hard at being good, such that, dear God, rest with me, my life with a constant bubbling of positiveness and a kind of creativity, rather than with the power of destructiveness and negativism which undo the lives of so many. I'm not being superior when I write this, merely stating the facts as I see them. So duty is not a notion or a guide at all, ever. In the last 18 or 19 months since the pandemic happened and the country went into a lockdown and he became very isolated, I visited him a couple of times and he visited home once. And I spoke to him maybe once a month at least. But as I think Ruben was saying, you never ever heard him complain even in the last 18, 19 months, when his life had really been diluted and really been isolated. Never once a note of complaint, never once a note of lamentation. In fact, he was sometimes relieved that I was sounding all right because, as you know, all work had come to a stop at that time. And I had a very deep personal sense of gratitude to the college, to the principal, to the college staff, Shakil particularly, and to the younger members of the college, APD, Mena, Vikram, who were so close to him and who provided him not just with material needs, but whatever succor that could be provided to him in the last few months and years that he spent here. As I said, when he came over, he was bent. But I just want to say that his father had lived at 100, and somehow it always seemed to me, at least, and to some of us, that he is going to go on to live till 100 as well, because we never had any sense of skepticism about his ability to go on and just go on and on and on, and one never felt, that there's no question of ever having any kind of a pity on his loneliness or his isolation or his physical decrepitude even, because even when bent over, he seemed so erect and even formidable to some of us, because he remained what he was in spite of his age, in spite of his isolation, in spite of his destitute in a sense. It's few letters came for him towards the last year, and I'm not sure whether he wrote any himself. The end was as clear. If he had taken on full-time assistance, he might not have had the fault that took him away. But to concede to a kind of dependence, to invalidity, and really at the mercy of others for living, would have been. And his God ensured that he escaped that fate. I just want to close with a few lines from one of his favorite poems, Putnam's Atlantis. And all the little household gods have started crying, but say goodbye now and put to sea. Farewell, my dear, farewell. May Hermes, master of the roads and the four dwarf Kabairi, protect and serve you always, and may the ancient of days provide for all you must do his invisible guidance, lifting up here upon you the light of his countenance. I would like to invite Dr. Bhatnagar to speak.
begin by thanking Principal Saab and Anne for organizing this and organizing the lovely farewell we were able to give them in the daily life, the next daily life. And thank you for intervening in the sessions. Because the first thought that intervened when I heard the news was, when am I going to go back to college? So you made sure that generations of us will always have something to point out. So thank you for it. Thank you for that. And I hope to keep it doing. So thank you for making the radio difference. Now, I was thinking as I was, I wanted to put out some notes and some ideas on a piece of paper before I would be very meticulous as Dr. Baker had taught us to be. But then it's like, I'm not going to stand there and be solemn. Let's just celebrate his life. He had a good life. 89 years, solid good life, solid research, lots of teaching, lots of laughter, lots of saying things that were slightly inappropriate at times. So I'm going to tell you some anecdotes from his life that occurred in my presence. So my first introduction to Dr. Baker was right there, over there, where the first year history students sit. And he was taking the roll call. And one of my classmates responded by saying, yeah. Okay, I wasn't looking at Dr. Baker, and I was just looking there, and suddenly you hear this voice which says, reserve your ears for your contemporaries. My English, okay, yeah, you go back. So that was the first sort of stern thing we got from him. Another small anecdote. So just two anecdotes I tell you how he touched my life. So the second one was when I took my kids to his room, his team, when we moved back from that line and they told me around my kids. So, and my kids are not like anything to say more, they're pretty naughty. So we go into his room and we pull out the drawer, there was a chair with two hands, they get on top of it and start diving through it. And it was a nerve-wracking experience for me as a parent because I knew Dr. Baker wasn't on in his room. But surprisingly, he was so kind and patient. So just wanted to narrate these two anecdotes to say that this was him, that stern disciplinarian, everything in place, stubborn man, and the other was that kind, patient mentor who just loved you before his art, made you feel heard and seen in a way that was exceptional. Okay, so how did he impact my life? Because a part of me felt that I just didn't know him enough. I just knew him as a teacher, I didn't know him enough. But when I thought about it, I realized, oh wow, he's impacted a lot of my person. So today I treat myself as a historian and a writer, and I think my journey as a writer began with him. With him massacring my tutorials to my horror, putting all that blue ink on them, and turning them totally disempowered back to me and saying, Aparna, you know what? And I still have, I preserved the tutorial till today. It had a remark from him saying, Aparna, your writing needs a warm and a need to shake it into place. And I think that's where I started paying attention to, okay, this is called writing, it is not just English and not what is important. So, it was a long journey indeed, I'm still making that journey. And then he invited me as a teacher. So after having finished studying as a student, at some point I began teaching. And each time, till today, when I prepare my lecture, I'm like, okay, how would Dr. Baker do this? Because in Dr. Baker's class, as even then I said, there was something for the brighter student and something for the one who was trying to catch up. There was something for everyone. So he would come in 20 minutes before the class, make a map of Mycenae and read on the blackboard. And he would have gone through the linear questions, he would put all the questions on the board, and he would bring those heavy books, Renaissance papers. I still remember those lectures on Boccaccio, Giotto. Remember them? So he made an effort, and he still sees it most of the times. And not all students appreciated him, but the ones who did appreciate, did give him all that. So today when I prepare lectures, I said, how can I teach in a way that I get the practice son? I give the practice to something, the ones who were trying to learn also something. That was it. And the third aspect of my life is as a researcher. many students were not historians, few did. And I remember visiting him in the Riviera Apartments, and one entire bed being covered with index cards. And I said, it was a media. Is that how you do research? And he was like, yeah, this is my entire book. So that was him, painstaking research, spending years, and I believe that the time was on his side. He was never rushed about. He wrote up his notes, did his job, got the books together, ventured into new areas, and that's what I took away from him. If you want to be a researcher, it's a lifelong journey that you make through your research. So that was him, guiding me in every step. Even though he was not physically present, he was there in my mind. There is him with information. Dr. Baker gets it. So that's my relationship with him. And just a little thing about how I felt burdened seen around him. He even knew how conceited and arrogant some of us would be. So one day we were sitting up on the terrace top one of those sun-soaked mornings, and the tutorial was going on, and he asked a question. The student whom I lay very little by answered the question, and then Dr. Baker turned around and said to him, "But you didn't think he could answer that, could you?" And he looked at my face and he started laughing, because that's exactly the thought I had about my classmate. So that's the degree of seeing that you felt, and I think that's the biggest thing about a teacher. We feel that someone sees you, hears you, you mean something to a person. Okay, so I'm going to end on a small anecdote about his time in Uzbekistan with an Ramesh. So he visited one Professor Sumash Chakravarti, long gone now, an University of India, who was posted there in Kashmir. Dr. Baker visited him. Dr. Baker went there and decided that it was not nice not to be doing anything in the house if he was doing in someone's house. I wonder if other people have had those experiences. So he said, "I'm going to jhadu lagaunga." So, and Suhash Chakravarti was visibly offended. You will not do the jhadu in my house. No, I will do the jhadu in your house, and it led to a fuss. And I quite forget how the fuss was resolved. But I do remember Suhash Chakravarti coming back from Tashkent and one day narrating this story, and all of us bursting into laughter as he narrated it. And the punchline was, once Dr. Baker left, Suhash Chakravarti went and bought himself a chocolate. He said, "Now I'm going to enjoy Baker has left." So since that time, although anecdotally tells about Baker Saab's stubbornness about certain things, but that's the man he was. So since that day, in our house, chocolate cake has come to be associated with Dr. Baker. Yeah? So farewell, Dr. Baker, so to the heavens, you will live on through us, and I should have a chocolate cake to my memory at each time I visit. And
now we will have the screening of a short film titled A Road Less Traveled. This film features Dr. Baker and is much loved and much frequented places around campus. The film was made in the year 2009 by one of Dr. Baker's former students, Dr. Salma Siddiqui. The voiceover has been given by Dr. Sophia Siddiqui, and the cinematography was done by late Danish Siddiqui. We will not be screening the whole short film. We will be screening excerpts from it. Please.
I discovered the Ridge on a history walk led by Dr. Baker. The histories he talked about were seemingly more mine than his. After all, I grew up here. Our house was adjacent to the Ridge. and yet Dr. Baker became my link to the time gone by.
It's just one of those stories that people tell and nobody really knows anything about it. There it is. There's that stone enclosure there, see that? A site of the graves of 4 English soldiers in 1857 whose bodies were placed on a cart by their Indian attackers and sent up the ridge on a bullock cart. And when the bodies came here, they were later buried, and this enclosure was built around those graves. The graves had been vandalized and the gravestone was removed. Either in 67 or 68, I wrote to St. Stephen's College just out of the blue. Did they have a post for me? And an answer came back straight away from the then Vice Principal, Mr. Shankland. Yes, that one of the Englishmen has just left, so if you want his post, you can come. And I arrived in college on the 19th of July, 1969. In the background you can see this circular building called Flagstaff, and it's known locally as Banta. This building has been here since 1828. This building played a very interesting role during the 1857 revolt. It was a refuge for women from the cantonment and children who were escaping from Delhi and who gathered here in May 1857.
The Flagstaff elicits an empathy with events in the distant past. It seals within the suffocation of women and children who sought refuge one night, a fateful night that lent this lonely battery a distinctive life story.
Today, of course, it's used as a sports club for storing sports equipment, and I think most of the people who here, and there are people here all day, probably are unaware of its historical importance, but I think that Delhi people in general are not very interested in history. When I came in '69, it was open and I've often climbed to the top. Yes, that's right, 84 rights we did go up there. It was just clear that Delhi was under fire, you know, and that it was obviously, you know, retribution for Mrs. Gandhi's death. I mean, it was a terrible thing, but this is the way that people act in India.
Do have destinies of their own that outlive ideas and intentions.
The kind of difficulties of a kind of transition or transit from one place to another were helped immeasurably by those early years in college. There's no doubt about that at all. No. There are lots of people who are moving, either refugees or by choice. So this is nothing new. The only thing is that, you know, I was an individual and making the trip in reverse. I mean, I was coming to India rather than running away from it. If I was running away from anything, I was probably running away from Australia. But, you know, I think if you migrate as a family and then you are moving around with other members of your ethnic community or language community, it makes things much easier. If you are a single person, as I've thought about it later, because those early years were quite a testing time for me in a very deep kind of way. You are exchanging climates, you're exchanging food, you're exchanging dress, you're exchanging culture, language, all kinds of things are being swapped in a way. It's not that you forget one and take on another, it's not like that. So I think a lot of foreigners coming here, and I did too, fall into the habit of trying to be more Indian than the Indians. But that's only a temporary phase, you know. Anyway, I came through whatever it was, and you know, then I felt as if I'd arrived in a way, and yet one can never fully arrive in a place where you've not grown up. I mean, you may not fully arrive either in the place where you have grown up. So that one can be an alien even in one's own kind of native place, so to speak. So, well, I can't exactly say Delhi is home, but it's certainly a place that I wouldn't want to leave. You know, all kind of things happen to us in life, and they determine outcomes, and so it's no surprise to find me still here, though I don't know how long that would go on, but because there may come a principal who's fed up with me and doesn't want me around, so I have to take note of that, you know. I don't have anything more to say than that.
The houses of people he visited, accompanied him to the hospital for medical checkups, stayed with him in the hospital. And as a small gesture of gratitude, we would like to present Shakil with a shawl. And I request Principal John Verghese and College Bursar, Jihan Mukhaya, please come and present Shakil with शकील आप डॉक्टर बेकर के साथ सानिध्य ले रहे हैं और हम लोग आपके आभारी हैं. We now, I'd like to now invite Mr. Lalan to please make an announcement.
Experience, seniors and juniors. It gives me great honor of a large chunk of Civilians in the Northeast. And so this evening, I just want to share a little bit of my memories in college and time spent with Dr. Baker. It was the year 1988, fresh out of school, and Bishop was 17-year-old, armed with the achievement of having made it to college. Delhi was experiencing its hottest year in the past 30 years. The final countdown, sweet child of mine, the man in the mirror, the wild west, led down the corridors of the Wild West. Those from British would know which block I'm referring to. Kamla was kidnapped. There's a policy popularly known as down. It was a threat for us to take our days to challenge Satya Rajna. And for a movie and movies and mirrors of happy faces to be seen.
Rely on the famous Delhi Auto literally statue of all the energy with a heady concocted cocktail of petrol and kerosene that gave you blurry vision, runny nose, noisy front engine that strained hard to climb up the ridge. We would literally push the driver's seat hoping that it would somehow mysteriously give an extra boost of brake horsepower. The ever-present 5-liter Castrol can of water that came in handy for the driver to cool down the engine. Standing in queue at the phone booth to make that crucial phone call. Only a lucky few PCOs had the quick dial phones. Bread omelette and the ubiquitous chai at the Hindu Rao Dhaba late in the night gave a sense of energy. I was the fortunate or the unfortunate few who had to rush back to Res before the 10 p.m. curfew. To sign in when the chip made the rounds with the attendance register. I had a block tutor who made it a point to send those handwritten chips with the number of late entries at the gate. Dr. Baker, yes, he was my first block tutor. 33 years have gone by. The flashbacks are many. My room, 09, Rudra South, was a couple of rooms down the hallway from block tutors. His invitation for tea, as we have heard from our past speakers, would inevitably entail discussions about life at campus, family, and past students from the Northeast. As he went about making the tea with a pause in between, pointing to the sugar and milk powder. We were made to feel at ease, and in those moments, we forgot that he was a block tutor. For many of us, being away from home, he was a father figure. The passing away of Dr. Baker came as a rude shock to all of us. I felt he had a special affinity to the Nagas, but then I guess he was like that with everyone. Dr. Baker belonged to everyone. Many may have known that the poor and the needy were especially close to his heart. But I, for one, was pleasantly surprised when I had a conversation with our principal to know that he had been financially supporting many needy students at college through the years. So when we spoke to the principal and deliberated on what we could do collectively as a chapter to honor his memory and pay a tribute to his legacy, the alumni chapter of Nagaland thought it most appropriate to institute an award, the Dr. D.E.U. Baker's Award for Excellence, to be awarded to the student who scores the highest aggregate marks in humanities. And towards this, the chapter has committed to an endowment of rupees 10 lakhs. This evening, I would like to give this to the college bursar. Baker lives on, his legacy, the rich legacy that he has left behind. May all of us cherish his life and let us celebrate this wonderful man that impacted so many. Thank you.
I now invite Mr. Ali Singh to his page and make an announcement.
Thank you. A lot has been covered this time for Dr. Baker, reminiscences, his experiences, interactions with us, with his group of friends and well-wishers. There's a lot that one can add. For to me, he was a very close friend, as with others, you, and Ashish. And as I expressed to the principal, I knew him both as a student and thereafter as a friend for a period of 51 years. And he was like a family member to us, visiting me wherever I was posted during my banking days, Amritsar, Mumbai, of course Delhi, and sharing his thoughts and his experiences and all those things that we created right now. I'd just like to say that he knew his India. India knew him too. This was his country. And it gives me great pride as an Indian that someone like him chose to change his citizenship to becoming an Indian. And for influencing so many people in Pennsylvania and all this time in a positive manner with the attributes that you are expressing. This is very important, and somehow this must be embellished, it must be spoken about in this time. He had friends across India, and sometimes he was recognized on the street. I have instance to recall that. And he had, I won't say too much, time is getting on. The principal has requested me to make 2 announcements. I'll make them shortly. But I'd just like to say that when I attended his first class, first tutorial, 1970, I used to take pride in my spelling, and my tutorial came back not just with corrections on syntax but also spelling mistakes. And since then I've gone out of line to ensure that spellings are correct. But in his tradition, 2 years ago, there was a Founders' Day which the principal organized with the staff, where they honored him here. The first time I actually saw him in a gown, and a scholar's gown, and he gave a speech while sitting, because of course he couldn't stand on the podium. But in that brief speech, he made the point that in the program there was a name that was not spelled correctly, and that it should be done so. So this is him, it characterizes him, and this is our Dr. Baker. I'd just like to make an announcement that, you know that Dr. Baker is working on a book. This book is complete in its form and is under editing with 2 of his previous students and colleagues. And college will publish this book, which he was working on till the end, almost. And on finishing it, of course, he expressed his satisfaction to Ashish as to where it had come to. College also plans to start a press, and I am making the second announcement, that this press will publish papers, books, journals from St. Stephen's College. With all due respect, he's taken the decision to honor Dr. Baker because the first publication of this press is being his book. And in a way, it will honor Dr. Baker, whose life exemplified the virtues of work and discipline, which is also in a way synonymous with what college stands for. Of course, due approvals, internal and adherence to governance standards will be ensured. Lastly, and on behalf of all of us, and I say this not just on behalf of all of us who are here, but also the different chapters of Stephanians who get together in other parts of India and outside India. The West India chapter in West Bengal, the Stephanians in Rajasthan, Stephanians in different parts of the world, the UK, the United States, and other areas. On behalf of all of them, I'd like to thank the principal. I don't represent them, I'm just expressing something that is important. I'd like to thank the principal, the staff, Karamcharis, all of us who took care of Dr. Baker all these years and made his life comfortable and fulfilling in his own way. I thank college for the honor and grace with which he was put to rest, and the fact that he is with us and we can visit his last resting place in a symbolic manner. Thank you for this. And I am very proud of the fact that Dr. Baker was my teacher, friend, and the way he expressed himself and the way all of you spoke about him. I wish we could have a session, an informal session where some of you represents. We could talk about openly and think about the time that he left with us. Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a privilege to be the principal of a college. It's an even greater privilege to be the principal of St. Stephen's College. My dear friends, colleagues, students, we've just heard a series of tributes to Dr. Baker for the man that he was to each one of us. The announcement that Mr. Ravi Singh made was a decision that he, Dr. Aditya Pratap Deo, Mr. Diljit Titus and I took together. The decision to publish Dr. Baker's manuscript as the first of, God willing, many books that will be published from a press that we will call our own. It's a challenge, it's not easy, but looking at the life of someone we respect and honor, we know that many things are difficult, but we must nevertheless go forward with all that we have, doing our best and in the best way that we can. So therefore, Dr. Baker's manuscript will come out as a book, and we hope that that will be the first of many such books, articles, creative pieces, and we hope to honor his memory in that way. We also are grateful for the spontaneous responses of love and affection and respect, which have come in myriad forms as an endowment which Manu just announced. If you go to the internet and key in St. Stephen's College /Dr. Baker, you will find that a young lady called Arundhati and a young man who worked in this college for just 2 years have put together a wonderful effort to respect and honor Baker Sahib. And that's a very interactive page, and I wish that each one of you will go there when you find time and put in your own thoughts and tributes into that page. There are many who are not here today, but who are watching this program on the YouTube link. One of them is Dr. Aditya Pratap Deo, who is extremely close to Dr. Baker. And when I stand here today, I also bring his tributes to all of us to place before the man we love and respect. There is much that we can say. There is much that I can say. As principal, I told you that I hold a very privileged position. One of the privileges is that the view from the principal's chair is very special. It incorporates so many other views. And today at this meeting, all of you have had a glimpse of what such a view could be. We see the different perspectives in which Dr. Baker related to each one of us. And we are very, very grateful for what he has been to us. He has been many things to us: a friend, a block tutor, a replacement, a parent, and a teacher. But like Mr. Ravi Singh pointed out, there is one aspect which I would like to place before all of us, because that is a quality which we increasingly see as becoming rare. And that is the quality of speaking the truth. Dr. Baker never held back from saying the truth, irrespective of whom he was speaking the truth. He has told me on several occasions that there are things which need to be changed in college. I'm sure he has done the same thing with many of us. And I'm grateful for the life and example of a man who spoke the truth and did his work to the best of his ability. We have teachers who teach and do just that. We have teachers who teach and do a little beyond that. But we also have teachers like Dr. Baker who teach and serve. College has been distinguished by the teachers who teach and serve. And I'm very grateful to Dr. Baker's family, including Dave, for permitting us to lay him to rest in college. Because when we pass by the chapel and see his tombstone there, it will remind us of a man whom each one of us can right here. From all of us, we're very grateful to the man who made this day possible and who enriched each of our lives. Thank you, Dr. Baker. Thank you, each one of us.
heard a voice from heaven, says the writer of the Apocalypse, the last book of the Bible, saying to me, "Write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works follow them." I shall say a prayer. May I request you to stand, as is the custom of this college. Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting God, you are always present to help us in our trouble and shelter us when we are overwhelmed. You are the Father and Mother of our Lord Jesus Christ, who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And of your love there is no end. Grant that your presence be more real to us than our sorrow. Fill us with faith in you and brighten our heart with light and peace through the promises of Christ. Lord, your name of old is a Redeemer. We bless and praise you for Jesus Christ, your Son, in whom you came to seek and save the lost. We thank you that he became a human being and walked the dark way before us, giving us rest by his sorrow and life by his death. We praise you that he abolished death and brought eternal life to us by his glorious resurrection. And we now rejoice that those who die in him do not perish but are present with the Lord. Lord, you are the refuge of the living, the rest of those who have died, and hope of the whole creation. We praise you for all your saints who have departed this life with the faith in the risen Redeemer. And now we especially thank you for your servant David, who is no more with us, but your promise of life in Christ fills our moment of sorrow with hope. We bless you, O Lord, for all your loving kindness to him throughout the years of his earthly life, for all that he was by nature and by grace to those who loved and cherished him. One by one you are gathering your children into the world of light, and we praise you, O Father, for this pilgrim who has now finished his earthly race and has now gone to the city of God. Amen. And now, the words of blessing. May the God of wisdom, who sent his Son Jesus Christ to be the light of this world, equip you with all that is necessary for you to do his will. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always. Amen. Please sit.
Good afternoon, Professor Verghese, Mr. Najib Jung, the Bursar, my dear colleagues, my dear fellow Stephanians. What a wonderful, wonderful afternoon this has been, truly. Though I was not a student of Dr. Baker, I've had many a chance to interact with Sir. But this last 1 week, I think I've gotten to know him in ways that I never thought I could. It was truly overwhelming, but it was truly, truly wonderful. As I was listening to all the things I said about Dr. Baker, I was reminded of this poem called Saint Kevin and the Blackbird. The poem is written by Shimasini. To put it very quickly, the poem narrates Saint Kevin sitting in a cage. He's kneeling down, with his arms outstretched. Now a blackbird, probably mistaken for a tree, comes and sits on his outstretched arms. It lays eggs and it starts nesting. Now it's a very difficult choice in front of St. Kevin, because if he were to move, he would destroy life. So he doesn't. He decides to hold his arm still, let the birds grow up, and learn to fly. The imagination behind this poem is that St. Kevin metamorphosizes into a tree, rendering his life, his being, for the service of other beings. To my mind, Dr. Baker's life was all that. Dr. Baker was perhaps the St. Kevin in this particular poem. He dedicated his life, his service, to several people, several generations of students and colleagues, and to this college itself. And as I was listening to, I think, Mr. Prashant trying to, tackle and understand what is the core Stephanian values, and I think he was able to identify a few of it. I certainly think Dr. Baker had presented college in many ways and some of the fundamental values of Stephania. So truly it is indeed our honor to have met and learned from Dr. David Baker, and I'm thankful that we have this occasion to come together and celebrate his life as a community should. I'm now standing here on behalf of the Alumni Association of St. Stephen's College. Allow me, on behalf of the Alumni Association, to extend my sincere gratitude to the very many people who have made this meeting meaningful and of course possible. I wish to begin by thanking Mr. Najib Jung for leading the memorial meeting. Thank you, sir. Our gratitude, of course, extends to Mr. Devashish Mahanti, Professor John Burgess, the principal, Dr. Malay Nirav, for hosting this memorial meeting along with the Alumni Association. Thank you very much. Further, we are very, very grateful to our dear speakers at this meeting. Mr. Prashant Sen, Dr. Dayal, Naina Dayal, Dr. Vikram Pukan, Mr. Anupinder Singh Rewal, Mr. Mahmood Farooqi, Dr. Aparna Vedic. Each and every one of them readily and graciously agreed to join us this evening, and we are very thankful for that. Our special gratitude, of course, extends to the Stephanians who have come together to carry forward Dr. Baker's legacy. Thank you to Mr. Lalometsuyo Yadin and the community of Stephanians he is representing. Thank you to Mr. Ravi Singh, Mr. Diljit Titus, who couldn't join us today, Dr. Aditya Pratap Dio, who is joining us virtually, Ms. Arundhati, who is working very hard to creating this wonderful web page that has been put together in memory of Dr. Baker, and of course all others supporting them. May I also take this opportunity to thank the Bursar and Reverend Father Monodeep for your presence and support. The memorial meeting would not have gone on so smoothly without the love and dedication of our junior members, may it be the wonderful youngsters, the choir or the technical team or the logistical team. They've been with us throughout, working on every minute detail, and I'm very, very grateful to them for the service that they provided. I would also like to thank my colleagues, the teaching and non-teaching staff of college, for also helping us put this meaningful evening together to honor and celebrate Dr. David's life. And last, but certainly not the least, thanks to each and every one of you for joining us in person, and to the many of you who are joining us virtually. We have a live stream link running, so they are watching us from the various parts that they are. So thank you for joining us. If you allow me, I have a couple of announcements now to make. After the memorial meeting, which will now be over, we will move on to the mess lawns, where we've arranged some high tea. So please do join us and at the high tea. Secondly, when you come out to the mess lawns, you will see 2 tables that has been set up. In fact, 3 I would say. One table has been set up for you to leave tributes for Dr. Baker in writing. If you notice, we have curated these lovely postcards for Dr. Baker's, in honoring Dr. Baker's love for writing. So you may please note down your thoughts, scribble it down there, and with your permission, we will be uploading it on the website that has been created for Dr. Baker. The second station or the second table will have a young student volunteer who will be standing with the camera. Now that's a video booth that we have set up. So you may go approach this particular booth and record your videos. These short videos will also be used in the website that we have created for Dr. Baker. There will of course be another table for the Alumni Association. If you wish to register with us, please do go to that table as well. So once again, thank you very much everyone, and on that note, perhaps we could proceed to the mess lawns now. Thank you once again.
Thank you.